Hello and welcome to the Tifo Football podcast. I'm Joe Devine and I'm now joined by a delirious JJ Bull.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
What a day, my word. Goals, do you see them all?
I saw the ball in the net. Yes,
Yeah.
please. How many goals was it? There were, excluding the penalties, there were 14 goals today in 2 games, something like that.
So many.
Extraordinary. JJ Bull is, of course, referring to France, Switzerland, and Spain, Croatia. Penalties, jeopardy, other things, many goals, very exciting. And, of course, we also want to welcome Sebastian Stafford-Bloor. Hello, Seb.
Hello, Joe.
You feel anxious still.
I feel knackered and anxious and like all my muscles are exhausted. Been tense for an hour and a half.
When was the last time that you felt like that watching football without teams that you support involved?
Probably an hour before this game started when we watched Spain against Croatia.
It really was a big day. And you know where else it's a big day every day? The Athletic. Because if you visit theathletic.com/Tifo, you'll find that every day there's something that you desperately want to read, more than you could possibly imagine. And the best thing is that it's all written by some of the best football writers around, isn't it, Seb?
Sure is. Got David Ornstein, Amy Lawrence, George Culkin, my personal favourite, Danny Taylor, Ollie Kay, Michael Cox, Adam Crafton.
Yeah.
Long old list of
I expect
football
Amy
writers.
Lawrence, who's been covering France, will be interesting to read Amy tomorrow.
Yeah, well, actually, I was also a little disappointed that Holland went out because I've enjoyed Simon Hughes' work.
Yep.
It's been very, very good. So, but there's loads of good writers.
And outside of the Euros, the nice thing to say about The Athletic is that there are dedicated team writers for every Premier League team, a handful in the Championship too, and we've got writers who cover both La Liga and Serie A and the Bundesliga too. James Horncastle, Rafa Honigstein, Dermot Corrigan. The list is almost endless. Plus 10 other sports if you like other sports. You know, I don't know why you would, but if you do, then there is excellent coverage of all of those teams too. So visit theathletic.com/Tifo and you'll find that you can get a 30-day free trial to try out everything I've just said for free. You've nothing to lose.
Good deal, that.
Well, I don't know how we're going to live up today in this podcast to the football that's happened. We're going to do our very best, but goodness me, it was exciting. I'm pleased to be here with you both. Well, okay, that's awkward, isn't it? A little silence.
Oh,
there.
lovely.
Yeah, lovely. Oh, yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Would have meant more if you'd said it 4 seconds ago, but don't worry. It's
I
fine.
know you like the space.
We kind of
You
never
like-
really leave. They just turn the cameras off. We just stay here all tournament and then
Glued to our desks.
this time of day.
Right. Well, that's football. We'll be back after I leave you in the warm hands and the cool embrace of football.
This is the start of the podcast. Starting right now.
Right. Here we go. Okay, where else to begin other than France 3 Switzerland, and 4-5 on penalties. Switzerland, of course, progressing to the quarterfinals to play Spain, I believe. We'll come and talk about that a little bit later on. But I'm not sure where else to begin than with Mbappe, Seb, because I feel bad for the boy. I
feel conflicted because I thought when it got to his penalty, I thought, I want you to miss because I want Switzerland to go through because they deserve it and it's a story and it's great.
Yeah.
And then as he was running up, I kind of changed my mind and thought, no, because you're just going to get pelted with criticism and you don't really deserve it because you've created 2 wonderful goals in this game and you've been France's route back into it with Granit Benzema.
Well, the memory is going to be that he hasn't scored in the tournament, right?
Yeah.
And that's the sort of... Of course, some of that criticism is reasonable. We can talk about his other performances too, but it does feel... Was he 21 years old?
Something like
that. And you think, when this is one of France's kind of golden generations, these things don't last forever, and the memory of going out on his penalty in a tournament where he hasn't scored, you feel like it will be there'll be disproportionate criticism for it.
Hey, look, we've all read the L'Equipe player ratings the morning after a Champions League game and just how harsh that is. And also, if you're a squad as talented as France, and let's be fair, France should have won that quite easily.
Yeah,
the tournament, not just the game.
Yeah,
that is theirs to win. They are much better individually. They're a deeper squad than everybody else. There's not really an excuse for them not winning. To lose to Switzerland in the last 16 is the kind of result that if it happened to any big nation, the rest of the world points and laughs because that's the way football works. It's all about Schadenfreude. So Kylian Mbappe is going to be front and center of that. So this big Christmas tree of criticism, he's going to be the angel on the top of it, and he's going to be the focus of all that national angst and anger and disappointment. And it's really hard not to feel sorry for someone who's going to go through that when they're that young.
I mean, the issue also, I suppose, is that when the natural comparisons for Mbappe are Ronaldo and Messi, right?
Yep.
I mean, he's kind of considered, him and Haaland are now considered in that conversation. And of course, Messi and Ronaldo have had varying degrees of success with their international teams. But you think of those big moments in those campaigns, and I'm, with the exception of a red card here or there, I'm struggling to remember a time when it's really been so obvious that it was their mistake which ended a run. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like those comparisons will draw too, JJ.
As in Mbappe's error will be the thing that's held up as remembered in this.
As in, like, it's always felt with Messi and Ronaldo that the teams around them are the thing that's holding their international success back, rather than a mistake that they've made individually. And again, we can debate how significant that is within the game. As Seb mentioned, Mbappe created those two wonderful goals, and we will come on to talk about those too. But you do feel like this is what he'll be remembered for.
Yeah, and the weird thing as well, you look at how France's tactics tonight are weird.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll talk about it in a minute. But you have Griezmann, Benzema, and Mbappe, and at one point Coman, all largely playing in the same space at one point. And Mbappe's touches, he's never really getting near where he wants to play. He's always been moving out wide, never gets through the middle. He's not the main man. Like, he's played very well at PSG when he was right wing when he was younger, and he seems to move across to the left a lot, and he's played as a 9, and sometimes I think I've seen him listed as a 10, though I haven't seen him play as that. Under, maybe not Pochettino, I think it actually was him that's played him there. So, we know how talented he is. There's a lot of... Obviously, I love Mbappe. When he came through, when he first broke onto the scene, and he was just everywhere, he was amazing. I remember at Monaco being stunned by how good he was. Yeah. But in the same way, weirdly, I was when Michael Owen broke through all that time ago. I remember being like, wow, this guy's amazing because this blistering pace. But he's got more than that. He's not just pace and tricks. Like, he's a really genuinely good footballer, great touch, very clever movement. But he doesn't do as much off the ball as I want him to. And I think he can... Often one of these players, you see that he'll maybe give the ball away and then look to blame it on something else. Very much... I've talked about this before, very much like me when I die in Warzone. It's someone else's fault and doesn't quite do the work to get back in.
Right.
That's probably not fair all the time. It's easy to say that against players who are forwards. Like Messi, he walks around a lot and then bursts around. And I think he's got the license to do it because he's Messi. And Ronaldo can do it because he's a bit older. But even when he was at his peak in Real Madrid, there was stories about Jose Mourinho talking to him and in the dressing room and Ozil saying, well, you can't, he's not doing anything, so the rest of the team's carrying you. It's not that Mbappe's being carried, but when you have so many players up front doing similar-ish things, they don't feel as quite tight a unit as they maybe were in the World Cup just before. And I don't know what it is. You'll be remembered for that penalty miss, but I'd say more it's the weird way that France got into this game and then the weird things that happened in it, rather than just Mbappe.
The weird way that they had the game won and then they kind of lost it again.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about momentum pretty much all day from the moment the football started, and this was another example of it. At 3-1, I remember saying to, I think, Joe, this is going to be like 5 or 6, and then somehow I forget the sequence of events which led to the second Swiss goal. But from that point on, it was like watching a different team. Yeah, it was really strange how fragile France quickly became. And in a way, like when you have that situation, when you carry it into penalties, it feels sort of predestined because you think this is how this story has to end. You get into these situations, you rescue them yourself, and then you throw it away again, and then you end the night with your best young player probably, sort of becoming a victim of the evening. It was like a kind of a Greek tragedy of a football game.
Yeah. Well, with the caveat of what you've just said about this game being a lot about momentum and, as Alex Stewart would describe, all vibes and no tactics, this is difficult
I don't understand what he means when he says that.
The listeners will. Don't worry. Everyone else will understand. Okay. That's fine.
I just pretend to. I nod along and smile when he does that.
Yeah, exactly. That's the right thing to do.
Okay.
But the point I'm making is that sometimes these sorts of games can be kind of difficult to analyse, JJ, because there's a lot in the ethereal occurring here. However, we did notice in the first half, or at least I was very surprised to see, under the sort of tagline of France messing this up, that they did start by sort of matching Switzerland up, didn't they? That's odd. We talked a lot about the 3-4-3 yesterday. We've been talking about it today because we've made a video about Germany, and we're thinking whether or not England will match them up in tomorrow's game. But France was an example when Alex and I were discussing it yesterday. We thought, well, they would never do that because they have all the best players. There are some tactical benefits to playing against a 3-4-3 with a back four and give the wing back something to think about. And with all of France's pace up front, we thought that's what they would do. They didn't do that, and what they did do, they then abandoned about half-time, after which it was sort of impossible to understand what they were doing, right? Talk me through it.
So, they started with this 3-4-1-2, and I did a lot of looking at a lot of teams before the tournament started, and I don't remember seeing them having done anything like this before recently. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But they've generally played that 4-3-3, or most recently, most likely, and most consistently, the 4-2-3-1, which is also a 4-4-2 at times because Griezmann's like a 10. But here they start with a 3-4-1-2, which is the same thing that Switzerland do. You know, 3 centre backs, 2 wing backs, 2 midfielders, and then Switzerland have Shaqiri playing as the 10. So they do that to get him in the team, but keeps defensive stability by having 3 centre backs, and then Mbappe, who's really good on the right, and I can't remember who's on the left. I'll remember that in a minute. His name was Zuber on the left. Did do well enough. And you've got 2 forwards. One of the best players of the tournament, Seferovic.
Yeah, absolutely. Who would doubt him?
I don't know. I mean, I can't see how anyone would, but yeah,
no, he's absolutely amazing.
We'll come on to him later, I'm sure.
Of course we will.
That's the lineup. Then France, you've got France have got the 3-4-1-2 as well to match it up. But weirdly, in the first half, the first thing I noticed was they didn't really have a midfield at all, because you essentially had Kante sitting in front of the back 3. You had Rabiot as a left wing back, and even when they changed after half time, they did change to like a 4-2-3-1. Actually, it wasn't even a shape. I didn't know what it was. At most of the time, it looked like a 2-4-4.
Yeah,
it basically
it was a Jackson Pollock formation.
It's just like, this is the thing. Like Patrick Vieira and Roy Keane. Patrick Vieira, who's a very experienced manager and played at the absolute highest level, so I tend to believe what he says and trust what he says. Said at half time that it doesn't matter what system you're playing if the players don't turn up, and I completely agree. It's that no tactics, all vibes thing. It's just that France weren't at it. They turned up as though they'd won it. They turned up as though it was going to be easy. They might take a long time, but eventually they'll break them down. But they didn't play with the energy, the snap. I was going to say the snip snap. They didn't play with the snip snap that they need.
They didn't play with the snip for sure.
Well, exactly, and not any snap either. And so without that, they weren't they weren't as good as needed to be to break down Switzerland, who are a very underestimated team, including by me. Like they just
and me and you and everyone, right? Probably
they're high rated in the FIFA rankings. Which how much can you trust that? Sure. They're never very good on like Pro Evo. So are they good? They must be, because they do well in these tournaments. It's odd. But yeah, that's the thing. And they changed. And so it's basically Deschamps seems to, rather than try and be like, well, we're getting done by this channel here, I'll just chuck on these amazing players. So then you've got Coman on the left, you've got Mbappe, Griezmann and Benzema all trying to get in the same position.
Yeah.
Griezmann, I don't think he touched the ball in the box. I've got a little touch map up in front of me. He has like 1 touch inside the box.
Just before the second goal.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
The little pass. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. A very crucial touch. So they don't all matter. I don't have to. But he's in the peripheral of the game. He's kind of the periphery. He's kind of floating around the 18-yard box, not really getting into it. And he's good when he's able to do that. That's when he was good in the World Cup, able to influence games that way. Mbappe, you want to play off. He wants to get in behind a high line. Yeah. Switzerland won't let him do it. So his big threat's kind of negated, but he does a lot of work on the left, and he was involved. Like his lovely drag back heel thing to get Griezmann in the first place. Yep. Lovely bit of skill. Like that's the thing. Like, I love Mbappe. He's such a good player.
We made goals 2 and 3, I think.
Yeah. It'll be funny if it's framed to do with him. Anyway, we're not talking about that. Yeah, the shape. And then you've got in the midfield, and Kante's kind of holding the whole thing together. Rabiot's meant to be a left back, but at no point is he. He's pretty much just a left winger. And his touch map kind of shows that as well. And on the right, you've got Pavard, who doesn't really want to get forward much. He doesn't really do that for France or really Bayern. He kind of stays closer. Sometimes he gets to the box and shoots. And then Pogba roaming around, also joining the attack.
Yeah.
So there's not much in the way of, I would say, structure, but it also came directly after, to go on the momentum and motivation point. As soon as Switzerland missed that penalty, that's when it changed. Yeah. That's when suddenly the energy just came and they just went at them.
Well, they scored 2 goals in 3 minutes, didn't they?
That's it. And it's just like Switzerland were deflated by it. I think you could see it. I can't remember which game it was. You could feel the difference after a certain point happening. And you could just feel that Switzerland dropped. They were like drooping there. They were crestfallen there. And then France just took them and went at them from there. And got their goals, net momentum, and that was the game. Should have been done.
It reminded me of Denmark-Belgium. when Denmark held that lead, and they're all intensity, and they're all sort of snapping into tackles and winning second balls and cleaning up on the second phase. And then Belgium equalised, and it was completely different from that point on.
Right,
That's what it felt like. That's what I was expecting to see, because you saw the body language of the players, and then I'm sure we'll be seeing quite a few pictures of Swiss fans over the next couple of days. But you saw the cameras panning around and sort of red face paint, draining off faces, and everyone looking incredibly depressed and shoulders slumped down. And it was like it was just like an emblem for what had happened, basically. And that was game over. France going to run up 5 or 6 now, and that's going to be it.
Except it wasn't, because Switzerland did what Ronan Keating would have wanted, didn't they? They rode the roller coaster,
right.
yeah? And let's talk about how they rode the roller coaster. And where better to start, Seb? Better to... this, people watch this, right? People listen. People remember what you say.
Zuba's assist.
Let's talk about Haris Seferovic, who has now made you look like the silliest man in Britain, hasn't he?
3 times now.
3 times.
3 times.
And twice in excellent fashion today. That first goal, JJ, I think at the time you said all neck, and that is the best way of describing that goal, because it was almost like it wasn't moving.
Loads of neck, because actually it's not that good a ball. It's a nice, decent ball.
It's a lofted floater.
It's a percentage cross, and Seferovic has to do all the work, put all the pace on the ball, and
accuracy.
And accuracy. I think when the header goes in, it kisses the post. You can't place it better than that. It's a brilliant header.
Perfect execution.
It's kind of the opposite of his second goal, which was, from that position, you just have to get your head onto it, and it's going in, and it's great positioning, good header. But actually, I think what was impressive, his work rate up front was brilliant. When he came off, he looked absolutely shattered, and he was absolutely terrific. Fair enough. And you're welcome, Switzerland, because I like to feel that this podcast is well listened to.
Taking credit there, I believe you think now that Austria has thanked you, and also now Switzerland has thanked you. JJ, I believe you thought after
I've
the
lit
second
a fire under players and teams this tournament. My criticism has been stinging and well placed, and these are players reacting and responding to it.
Sure.
You are welcome.
Moment of self-indulgence over, and we'll go and talk about Granit Xhaka now, JJ, because Granit Xhaka also had a great game, didn't he? He's a player who gets a lot of stick.
He sure does.
Today he used the stick to hit the opposition players. I mean, he didn't do that.
No.
He was just good.
No, exactly, yes.
Yeah.
Which reminds me of where I think foot golf would be a lot better if you could tackle people. Maybe not with the club. Separate point. Xhaka, kind of an odd player. I can never figure out if he's very, very good or not. Because he's obviously expensive in the first place when he went to Arsenal. He's always top of things like touches and passes at statistic tables. It doesn't mean anything really.
It's the packing stat, isn't it? That's what made him famous. Packing is basically a measure of how many opponents are taken out of the game by one pass. And Xhaka used to come up right at the top of that table every year in the Bundesliga when he was at Gladbach, and that was his thing. And it was like, this was what happened tonight. I mean, first of all, defensively, like the thing he gets criticised for is bad tackling, like making faces, being angry, being rash and silly. He was great tonight, and his pass for the third Swiss goal was brilliant. Watch it again. It takes every French player out of the game. It also kind of puts the forward in a position where the decision about what he's going to do with the ball is kind of made for him, because there's only one way to go. There's only one shot to take, touch, hit, and it's all about the pass. It's brilliant bit of football.
Someone in the chat saying Xhaka's yellow card means he can't play in the next game. Is that true?
I don't know. Listen, there's a lot of things have happened. We have basically kept abreast of most of them. If a few slip by, so be it. We shall find out tomorrow.
Yeah, fine. Okay, what else have we got to talk about? Let's talk about those 2 French goals when they came back into the game, because they were phenomenal. I mean, do you want to start with Benzema?
Madness as a touch.
Did he mean it?
Yeah, because look at his body shape. Look at the way he received the ball. It's like,
I know he meant to touch it, but did he mean to put it behind his standing leg?
Yeah, he's got that's his personality as a player, isn't it? Like, you can believe that he would do that. It's like the Bergkamp goal at Newcastle. It's just outrageously good. At the point where it just kind of transcends the game. You don't sort of think, what does this mean in relation to the game? You just think, that is absurd. It's like mind-blowingly good bit of football.
And it's not that he's lining it up to pull that trick off. It's not like you're going up to someone to do a flip-flap. It's just that
it's the most efficient way of doing it.
Yeah.
And it just looks incredibly stylish and cool as it happens. And it's just,
it reminds
love
me
the
that
football.
Johan Cruyff not a quote, but he was asked about where did the Cruyff turn come from. He just says, well, it's just the most natural thing to do in that situation to get out of it. And it's just the way the ball's bounced, and he knows he can get it through. Looks like basketball, the way he's managed to drag it through his legs. It's like a very basketball-y type of trick.
It's just also like the finish is underrated as well, because if you or I were in that position and we pulled that off to extricate ourselves from the defenders, you'd have the chance, but you'd lose it to your sense of smugness. Be like, look what I just did, and then you slash it over the bar. It's just a really cool, composed finish, and it's a shame actually that France are out, because it means that moment is kind of lost. I mean, not over time; it will come back and it will be very prominent, but it's just not the point this evening, and that's a little bit of a shame, I think. But it's just a beautiful, beautiful goal.
The chat appears to confirm, by the way, Xhaka's absence for the next game. Yellow card against Turkey.
That's tough, because he I don't know. Like, I'm not a fan.
He'll be needed against Spain.
Yeah, you'd have thought so. Yeah.
Tell you what, let's do that now, shall we? Spain.
Right.
Tell you what, let's do that after we've talked about Spain. I forgot that game happened today as well, didn't it?
That's my mind is. Let's have a break.
No break yet.
Okay.
We'll have a break after this, though.
Okay.
JJ, I want to ask you about Paul Pogba, because I would say 99% of the things he did today were amazing, and then 1% of the things he did today was one mistake that led to ultimately them losing.
Do you know, it's really harsh to call it a mistake as well, because the ball comes at him quite quickly and he just isn't quite aware of what's around him, and it's almost like Switzerland have a trap on him. And you see, if you watch the highlights that I can only find of this goal to watch it back, you see that he gets the ball very quickly, controls it, and then he wants to try and move to his left, but there's people that just swoop on him straight away. He can't do anything. Again, very much like in Warzone, when I go into a building and suddenly there's 3 guys there. It's someone else's fault. Then often you see what Pogba does. He's like, oh, it wasn't my fault. But so you can say what you should have done was being aware of that situation and knocked it away. Maybe knocked it in the air or knocked it sideways. Like
if in doubt, kick it out.
It's not even that. It's just I'm trying to think. I think like Luka Modric in that same situation. This is totally hypothetical. I feel like he would know instantly where that next ball should go.
It's when Modric is in that situation and defenders are kind of pressing him. It's like watching someone try and catch the wind. He gets away.
Like that.
He pirouettes away. He's such a neat player. He finds an angle and an outball, and it's that is Modric, isn't it? Like
but then again, I feel like I'm really, really harsh on Pogba, because he's one of the most technically gifted. Like in that situation, he's one of the ones who can do that. But I think I'm being really harsh, because it is just a trap that they set on him. And then you see what we're talking about the tactics earlier. There's no midfield, so Kante's the only one back behind him, because there's just in the midfield too. But really, Pogba's like an attacker. So Kante's get the whole of the middle to deal with, and then France start to peel apart, and you see the centre backs peel apart as they track runners, and then Kante has to go towards one of the players, and then the player that would have probably been blocked by a Kante Pogba double pivot, if they are both in place, he's the one that gets through the middle of them to run through, which naturally happens when if a player falls over, you're down a man. And you see Pogba was frustrated at the time. He probably knew that maybe that's like a tiny split second where he switched off, but in the last 4 minutes of the game of injury time, I would love to have seen what Roy Keane said about it after full time.
I wonder. I think he's entitled to expect a little bit of support. Like there are 2 conversations here. Like because of what we said about France's midfield and France's general defensive structure. No, he probably shouldn't be trying to do what he does when he has the ball in that position. But at the same time, he shouldn't be punished like that.
Yeah,
as a result of it, it felt very
also
harsh.
This is why in the question, apart from perhaps Benzema, was he not France's best player on the night? Some of the things he did were absolutely astounding.
As someone that just enjoys watching Paul Pogba, what Manchester United do and what he is to Manchester United, I don't really care for. Doesn't matter to me. I just like watching the spectacle of him with the ball at his feet, because he's so talented. And tonight, it's a shame again, like Benzema. There is so much good that Paul Pogba did tonight, and there were so many touches where he makes really difficult stuff look super easy.
Sure.
And his goal was that we made that kind of weird involuntary noise you do, like when you're watching football and something really great happens. You know that. And he was just so much fun to watch. And I think when people criticize Pogba because he plays with a bit of ego. I like that about him.
Yeah.
I like the way he struts in games because that's the magic in sport. You want players that have self-belief.
It's the foundation for 50% of the good about him as a player too. Like without that attitude, he's not that player.
No, and not every player has to be a kind of like grinding, grafting central midfielder with a shaved head and a big beard.
Sure.
It doesn't it's absolutely fine for players to show how gifted they are. I don't know when it was that people decided that wasn't okay. When it was like it was a problem for people to.
I think I associate it with Scott Parker.
Yeah, but Scott
as a player who just was diligently professional and always in the place that you wanted him to be, and occasionally had a goal in him, but you felt like you could trust him. And there was a couple of years where he was the most celebrated player in some weird way in the Premier League.
He was the player of the year in England when West Ham survived relegation.
Yeah.
I think. Oh no, when West Ham got relegated, I think.
Sure.
But I think the point is that like okay, everyone loves Scott Parker, and that's fine. But Scott Parker in Tottenham's midfield played alongside Luka Modric, and the two work together. They're not the same, and one enables the other to play in a certain way, and they have a sort of a codependency. Kante, and I really hate the way Pogba's been treated in England. Like it's such a privilege to have a player of that ability in your own league that you can go and watch and plays in front of you every week. And it's just we've created a conversation around him, which is just I don't know, really tedious.
Yeah.
And on that as well, like people maybe wonder how come he plays so beautifully for France, but Man United he keeps getting things wrong, whatever. It's a really good Yaya Toure article. Written by Yaya Toure in The Athletic. It talks about the one about bums that Joe's mentioned before. And in that, he says that when he went to the Premier League, he realised... So in Spain, he said he would have about 10 seconds on the ball in midfield. At the Premier League, he said it would be about 3 before he gets smashed by a player like Scott Parker. So Pogba often can't do the things he needs to be able to do that makes him really special and fun to watch. He just has to do the simple things very well.
Yeah.
But then where's the fun in that? And it takes all the fun out of life. So when he does the fun things, some of them are amazing. Some of them, he loses the ball in the middle of the pitch and there's an overload and they concede goals. So you think he's made a mistake.
Well, also, if you think back to your football watching life...
We should have gone for a break, shouldn't we?
We should do, but...
hold on. Let's go for a break and you pick up that train of thought when we're back from the break.
Okay.
And we're back from the break. Pick it up.
I shout, like, at some point, people decided that indulgent moments and decorative like performances are a bad thing. If you think back to your football watching lifespan and you think to beyond like achievements of your own sides, the moments that you remember, so a kind of like Di Canio's volley for West Ham against Wimbledon, where he like scissor kicks that goal against Wimbledon. You think, okay, you shouldn't be trying that, but thank goodness you did, and thank goodness you ran the risk of really badly wasting what should have been quite an easy sort of like back post header. And it's sport, it's entertainment, and it's fun, and you want to see people do things that you can't do yourself. And Pogba's one of those. Like he's on the one hand an amazing athlete with this really long stride that can cover the length of a pitch. On the other, just can kill a ball or put it on a sixpence from 50 yards away. Do all of these things, and I want to see all of them, and I don't care that there's a little bit of risk involved. And I'm not French and I'm not a Man United fan, so you take all the jeopardy away from that for me. I accept that. But I don't know, like I wanted him to be a bit more embraced in England, which he hasn't been, and it's a shame. It's such a shame.
And the long-range goal as well, so that the technique on that, something you said I thought was interesting, Joe, about how he used to do that at Man United and youth teams quite a lot.
Yeah.
So having the technique to do it, it's a thing I noticed in the Premier League, especially I think this season, that teams take fewer shots. And I went and looked through all the data like a nerd and found out that I was mostly correct.
Like a nerd.
Like a nerd, yeah. So shots taken from outside the box in the Premier League fell every year from 2013-14. They've gone down a couple of percentiles. So down from 45% of shots taken being outside of the box in 2013-14 down to 36. Not huge, but it's enough to make it noticeable. Goals scored from outside the box have also dropped, as you'd imagine. And the reason like that probably is the rise of managers like Pep Guardiola, Thomas Tuchel, put them in there, who look to maximise chances to score, to be efficient with their chances. And we know that in terms of expected goals, you're going to score most of your goals if you take a shot between the width of the posts or the 6-yard box as close to the goal as you can. So rather than taking a shot from 25 yards, which has got a very low expected chance of going in, you fumble around until you eventually get the ball in the box and you score. But when you've got players like Pogba who can hit it in, you see that goal almost sealed the game.
Yeah.
But another thing, like Italy the other day, was it 27,000 shots or something, and they're all just getting... If the keeper parries one in the way of a striker like Mbappe, so someone takes a shot and Mbappe runs into it, that's the kind of thing you get more goals from. And I would like to see more of it, because something about international tournaments is that happens a lot more, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just in my mind, but definitely...
I think you're right. I think it might be the slightly more defensive outlook for most teams, more difficult to break down getting inside of the box, less time to prepare in order to do that. Maybe teams in more dire straits needing to take those chances a bit more, being a little bit more desperate. Do you know, I've always thought that that's where XG falls down, though. One of the areas where it does fall down. It couldn't possibly account for this, but I can't wait for the future when players are immortal and they can take shots, infinite number of shots from every position, so that we can see what Pogba's XG from that position would be as opposed to another player. Because I know it's, there's a sort of low percentage chance of a goal being scored from that area with the defenders in front of the player as they were. But when it's Paul Pogba, it's not as low, right? I mean, that's how it works.
So the players are all immortal.
That's where I got lost.
I don't understand that.
I just mean, the only reason XG works is because you can take such a massive sample size. You can take the samples from every player
over infinite years.
So no, I'm just saying, like, XG working in this time now, where we exist now. Forget what I said about immortality. That's confusing. I understand that. But the reason it works is because you have such a large sample size, because you're taking samples from all sorts of different players.
Yeah.
But if you were able to have a big enough sample size to just take samples from one player based on that one player's position.
Oh, I see, like the Shakespearean monkey's typewriter type thing. So you
exactly,
have enough.
Like, it doesn't work now because Paul Pogba hasn't taken enough shots from that very specific position for us to be able to calculate anything that would be useful to know, right?
Yeah.
But if he was 1,000 years old, he probably would have done.
And then you could tell whether the players playing badly or not, because they should have hit that goal
exactly.
they normally do.
And we could get them more. Get them. Get the footballers.
I like it.
Speaking of getting the footballers, that doesn't work. Last thing I want to say on this, Seb, I didn't like the camera angle behind the shooters at the penalty shootout. I didn't like it. I do remember it was either the Europa League or the Champions League this season. There was one penalty shootout. No, not a penalty shootout. There was one penalty given at some point during a game where the main camera angle for the broadcast was from behind the net. And I quite like that because you got to see from the keeper's perspective. That was more interesting to me. I didn't like the behind, and I felt like they realised that because they changed it after 3 penalties to the sort of more normal one.
Yeah, that's a good and bad point. Like I enjoyed it initially because it felt like I was getting to see how good the penalties were.
Yeah,
you got to see in real time how difficult it must be to save a penalty, but also the accuracy.
It's scarier.
Is a little bit. Also, I didn't like the way that the netting sort of billowed. It was a bit weird. Like a couple of players found the top corner, and it got caught in the net, like you'd snag yourself in a curtain or something. Like if I trap myself in this, possibly. But then, go back to the sort of the orthodox normal angle, and it feels a bit more dramatic. Feels like the sort of the classic penalty shootout situation.
Yeah,
I didn't see the behind the goal one, so I don't.
I really like that, but the difference again is it was a one-off, and I appreciate what you've just said. Absolutely true. Everything you get from seeing from behind, either from behind the shooter or from behind the goalkeeper, there's a massive extra layer of intensity that comes with that, and appreciation for the skill level required to score and all of the rest of it, right? But I don't have a frame of reference for it. If they'd done that forever, then I would feel like I would be able to say, "Oh, that was a good penalty," or "That was a bad penalty." But if I'm not seeing it from the same angle, I feel like I don't know whether it was good or not.
We were talking about this because it's the Pro Evo FIFA angle. It's the one where even as long ago as like international superstar soccer on the, I forget even what that was on.
N64.
Yeah, on the end. No, actually, the Super Nintendo first of all.
Did they have it there?
Yeah, they had an ISS 64 on the N64, and that's the first time I saw it with the kind of the big box that you'd move around, and that's. I think, to be honest with you, I think it's the way it will go because a lot of people will have grown up with that as the angle you associate with penalties. So it's Andy Echo Scott says Mega Drive. I didn't play it on the Mega Drive. I was a Super Nintendo in my house. So
I love the angle. I thought it was great.
Yeah,
it looks like you're actually going to take a penalty yourself.
Also, centre backs taking penalties. I loved that. Like it's kind of this, back in the day, if a centre back took a penalty, you'd hear the organ music as they walked from the halfway line, and you'd get that sense of foreboding. These guys just whip it up into the top corner. Yeah. It's amazing, like how gifted centre backs are now.
They're all good, aren't they? All the players are good. Two things. I want to ask Seb about the France sleeping thing, but also I feel like we haven't done enough praising of Switzerland, JJ. I want you to praise them more for me now.
How do I praise them?
Praise them for me.
I think they showed great character to get back into the game.
Yeah.
I don't really know. I was really impressed with Mbappe on the right. I read a thing where he says he's basically doing everything to prove Newcastle wrong because he hates them.
That is the best kind of fuel for the fire.
I didn't literally say that, but that's what I've taken from it. Sure. I thought he was excellent. You talked about Xhaka already. They were just decent. They were just a decent team, and it's more like I think France lacked a lot of structure, especially when they started letting in those goals at the end. They played to a 4-4-2 in the end, and then they still had that midfield two of Pogba and Kante, which should be fine because both are two of the better players in the entire world, so together they should be fine. But something just wasn't quite there.
I think you nailed it at the beginning though when you said and it's a bit of a cliche, but character, because when France scored those two goals within the space of 3 minutes, and for a few moments after that, they were still peppering the net, and it felt like, as you said, Seb, this was going to be 5 or 6-0.
Yeah,
they didn't fall apart. Like they fell apart for about 2 minutes, and they were on the edge of going off that cliff, and they pulled it back to win the game. I mean, like that there are moments in sort of in sporting games that are absolutely crucial to success, and you feel like that was one of them, that they held it together as a team. To get to the end there. Goosebumps. I'm getting goosebumps.
The four in front of the defence were great. So Widmer, Zuber, Xhaka, and Freuler. I thought that was, as a unit, that was great, because I know there were a couple of moments when this didn't kind of hold up, and when, obviously, the Pogba goal, but they protected the edge of the box quite well. And whilst sort of France had a lot of the ball around the edges of the box, felt like they didn't create many chances centrally. So Jan Sommer, obviously, made the crucial penalty save, and he made a really good tip over from Benjamin Pavard. I think in the second half, or maybe at the beginning of extra time.
That save at the death of extra time too, where he catches the ball. Yeah. You got to be a brave.
We said camera save, didn't we? And then they showed the other angle. And you thought that's a full stretch. And
I like the idea that by the time his feet have left the ground, he has to have decided to catch the ball, because otherwise his hands are all in the wrong place, and that's extremely brave.
Yeah, and he was good, but LVD as well. I don't know much about him, but I thought he played very well. But it was, I don't know, like I'm gonna say it, Seferovic was excellent. He really was. Like I'm still not buying him as a consistent to be relied upon goal scorer.
Sure,
but sometimes when you say a player is hardworking, it feels like a little bit of a backhanded compliment. But genuinely, if you don't have him at the top of the formation, I think it looks a lot worse. You certainly, in the first half, he scored the goal, put them ahead, but Switzerland worked incredibly hard to go in ahead.
Yeah. Do you know also really good? I totally forgot. Breel Embolo. He was...
We were talking about him, weren't we? Yeah.
I think it was the first game we saw him play, and the way he was driving with the ball, he just carries
awesome in that game.
Yeah, it was against Wales, wasn't it? Yeah, and he's just driving them forward, yards and yards and yards. Progressive carries, I think that's called. Don't know why I said it in the ISS 64 guy's voice. Nigeria with progressive carries. So he's coming of age or whatever. There's a new number of cliches I could use to say what Mbolo's doing. But yeah, he was great. I just realised as well that as much as I'm praising Mbappe, he only came in on about the 70th minute as a sub or something like that. Yeah, he made such an impact on me.
It felt like he came on with a brief to be a bit more aggressive. So I feel like that might have been part of the momentum changing the game, because every time you look up, he was playing at the other side of the halfway line. And I thought it was great. Like there's an article written by Chris Wolf on The Athletic where he talks about how when he was at Newcastle, they tried to send Kevin Mbappe to Gateshead, which is like a non-league team in England, which is just so very Newcastle. Hey, when someone talks about ISS 64, do you remember the little placards you used to see in the crowd which said things like, the best team will win?
Yes.
Or run fast and win the game? Like, it was just motivational and pure and good.
I think we should bring those to real life football.
Yeah.
I was also thinking perhaps putting on players like Mbappe later on when they bring new energy to the team is what helped them. Obviously, they got energy against France, who will be tired. He might be slightly more tired. I can segue neatly onto the
That's very nice.
The sleeping thing.
Very nice.
So there was a story in one of the internets. I can't remember which one it is. I'm sorry. That France's coaches may be concerned with how the French players stay up, basically playing video games and watching Netflix till night. Because back in the day, you'd make sure that the players aren't allowed to get booze up to their rooms so they can have a party with everyone. But now,
And back in the day when you couldn't get booze up to your room, there was nothing to do.
yeah,
You just had to go to sleep.
read a book or be friendly with people.
Yeah.
God, what a time.
Yeah.
I prefer playing Warzone. So then they can they can play their on their iPads, their laptops, whatever. We know like Anton Griezmann plays Fortnite a lot. He plays Football Manager a lot. Not saying he's one of them, but it could be that they had they're playing games. That's not why they lost. Switzerland were really good. Got to just point out that before you'll start saying that I'm trying to accuse Football Manager of making them lose. But they had how many more nights of sleep, Switzerland?
So Switzerland had 3 more days of rest than France coming into this game. They had a bigger break. And so compounded by that French sleeping issue, which is, there are stories, it's on a site called, let me look it up so people can find it.
It's a very long name, isn't it?
Getfootballnewsfrance.com. That's the story, and that's the link you sent me. And so there are reports of players being up until 4 or 5 in the morning, and they've got their tablets and their games and their Warzone and their Fortnite. And it's, any time one of these stories comes up, I just think David James. I can't help it. It's like a mental signpost. It's so when back in the late 90s, David James obviously made quite a few mistakes when he was playing for Liverpool, and he blamed an addiction to what I imagine was a probably PlayStation 1 game. I can't remember what it was, but he was up all night, and that supposedly contributed to his many goalkeeping rickets. That's the end of that.
Well,
that's
Jump
the
in,
end,
Joe.
And that's the end of this section of the podcast. We'll be back shortly after this delightful break.
Oh, we have to talk about a whole nother game, don't we? It's just exhausting. I'm tired. Hey,
I like
everybody's
how
saying,
when we started this, you were so polite and you were always waiting for your moment to talk, and now you just bowl in and talk over my outro. No, you don't even care that I'm still going. You don't even care for later when I've got to boost your quiet little voice so that people can hear while we haven't gone to the break yet. Do you know who's hardworking, Seb? You're hardworking.
that's not what you mean. You meant to say I'm hard work.
No, hardworking, just based on what you said before about. Do you remember when you said it sounds like an insult?
Oh, that's very clever.
Yeah,
that's very clever.
Thanks,
yeah,
man.
that's very nice.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody's saying that David James was addicted to Tomb Raider. You're quite right. That's exactly
Tomb
what it
Raider?
was. Yeah.
which was the one with
That's
the
a good
T-Rex, giant T-Rex that you find? Was that two?
Turok.
Two, I think.
That was called.
No,
That was
but-
Jurassic Park.
No, it was Lara Croft Tomb Raider, and then you go to a bit, and there's a T-Rex comes out of this massive cave.
Don't remember that.
People won't
The
know.
only bit I ever played of Tomb Raider was the assault course, the training bit at the beginning. That was really fun because the first level you dropped into a massive lake and there was a tiger, and I just couldn't get past it.
But Tomb Raider 2, the intro bit, you could lock the butler in the cellar.
Yeah.
I've done that a lot of times.
New Tomb Raider is good. My wife and I played the latest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shadow of the Tomb Raider.
Shadow of the Tomb.
Shadow of the
Very
Tomb.
creative.
Shadow of the Lara Croft.
Oh, but Tomb Raider 1, apparently.
Don't know.
Yeah. It was.
It's very
yeah.
good though.
I'm with you. Well, there we go. And we're back. And now we'd like to talk about another incredible game of football. What a game. Croatia 3, 5 Spain. It had everything, Seb. It had goals. It had own goals. It had everything, Seb. Tell me about what it had.
First of all, it had one of the most excruciating own goals I've seen in a really, really long time.
Oh, yeah.
So the thing I'm most grateful for in this game is that it did not finish 1-0, because when that happened,
Yeah.
JJ and I was sat in front of the TV and I had to physically walk away from the television just to distance myself from this kind of this toxicity of this awful mistake. I don't think it's compassion. I just think it's very difficult to watch another human being suffer through that, and to know that by the time he gets back onto the team bus, that's going to be everywhere on the internet. 1 million people will have sent it to his mother, and his life is never going to be quite the same afterwards. So brilliant that, well, not that everyone's now going to forget it, but it didn't decide the game. So it had one of those, however we're going to describe that. It had a pretty decent Spanish response to that, which looked like it was very conclusive. Had some terrible defending from the Croatians. There was some very strange moments, including, like, we think of fullback stopping playing to have a drink of water and That was very odd. I still don't quite understand what happened there because a lot of stuff has happened since then.
There also wasn't much time between the two games because of the extra time in this one too, right?
And it had a great finish. Well, we had what was originally a great finish, and I jumped up in celebration at Croatia's equalizer.
You did.
And I'm nearly 37 years old, and my back has seen better days.
Yeah,
and I got quite a lot of height in that celebration, so well done me.
You were soaring like Michael Jordan.
I was like in Space Jam.
Yeah.
And then,
or just in basketball.
and then actually, and then it might have had Croatia going ahead in extra time, but Simon makes a great save, and Spain run out and win it. But fabulous entertainment, but in a really irregular way. And before we started recording, we went through the sort of the running order in our list of talking points, and everything's very erratic.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about Ferran Torres over here and the Spanish centre backs over there, and didn't he play well and wasn't he bad? And isn't it interesting how goalkeeping mentality works, and how if you make a mistake, you've kind of got to have very, very short-term memory and forget about everything.
Yeah.
It's all over the place. Alex would say it's all vibes. Have I got that right?
I think
using that correctly.
So you see, it really did have everything. And this brings me to my next question, JJ, almost as though we'd planned it. Because I was going to say to you, it felt a little bit like Croatia created quite a lot of chances without a whole lot of craft. And I wondered, is this, similarly to the France game at times, is this just a sort of momentum thing? Was this just football taking over?
I'm trying to remember the game now. So,
I'll help you remember. Do you remember at the end of it when you thought, oh, the next one won't be anywhere near as good as that?
I do remember that. Yeah. So I thought Spain had total control of the game, and the first 15, 20 minutes, and as not a trend, but I've noticed it in most games of this tournament. The better team, there's a one really strong team for the first 15 minutes, and they just kind of own the game. It's usually the team who's playing literally at home in their home town country. Now they're the ones who tend to control it, and I thought Spain had control of that until the Pedri own goal, and as soon as that went in, Spain just dropped a bit, and Croatia were suddenly way, way, way harder to play against, much snappier, far more aggressionist. Far more aggressive. Oh my god. Far more aggressive, closer to close everyone down. So suddenly players didn't have... I remember there's like Busquets, this is straight after, would normally be able to get the ball in the half-turn, turn and look, but he was getting snapped before he could even release the ball. They were just on them. And from there, Croatia just sort of got into it and really they had the game, and Spain looked like they were in trouble all of a sudden. So it went from Spain looking like they were going to pummel them to suddenly being all different. No change in tactics, really. There's a small, tiny one. As Piliqueta was pushing forward high up the right wing early on, like a really advanced fullback. And then they pulled him back. I need to watch it again to fully know why, but they made it more of a back three in first phase of build-up. So they had rather than a back four becoming a two, it became a three. And that allowed Gaia to get high up the left wing. So you get your width and from other players up the pitch. Now, Modric was far too deep. You might have heard Emma Hayes on Colcoms talking about how he's lower. She's referring to him being deeper in the midfield and needs to get the ball more higher so that he can influence play. And he was able to do that, and that's when they started to be amazing. Because Modric was like I'd say he's their best player. He's been the best player in the whole tournament. He's phenomenal still. And they mentioned when he went off, it might have been his last game or something like that. There was some sort of mention of that.
I think maybe there was just speculation based on his age and their likely exit at that point.
He looks like he could play forever.
Oh man, he was just superb. And then so what happens later on in the game? So there's a change for Croatia. I think it's half time. Kramaric comes on for Petkovic. I don't notice a huge difference, but then you've got the goal as Piliqueta scores, set up by Ferran Torres. I'm just describing things that happen in the game. That's what I'm doing. I've become one of them. It's weird. The tactical setup, like Spain plays 4-3-3 is what they play. Morata's the tip of it. You've got Torres, who's sort of a winger, but not.
Yeah.
I said to you, I think I've said in the pod before, I'm not really sure exactly what he is.
He's had a great tournament.
Yeah. Yeah, I was really impressed throughout. As much as Modric was great, I think Pedri is outstanding.
Well, I'm going to ask you about Pedri a little bit later.
Okay, well, then
but before we do that, Seb, I want to ask you about the sort of Spanish centre-back partnership. Because for all the elasticity going forwards, That's not great going backwards just yet, are they? I mean, I know it's a fresh new thing.
Yeah.
But
So we were talking about chemistry before we started recording too, and how that can work sometimes with attacking players. I feel like defenders need a little bit of understanding. They need to be able to learn how to compensate for each other, need to read each other's movements, need to know what they have to compensate for, and where their weaknesses might be. And it was interesting because when Croatia got their second goal, it felt like they were able to be absolutely in control of the game without doing very, very much. And all of a sudden, Spain looked incredibly vulnerable in those positions. And the equalizer, the 3-3 goal, is a great moment, but that is incredibly soft as a goal to concede. At that time in the game, you're kind of caught in a transition situation, and then you concede an equalizer to a cross which is dropped. I want to say it's almost inside the 6-yard box between your centre halves. It's rubbish when you're protecting it. It just is. That's rubbish. That's really bad. And it feels like there's no real problem with the individual players. I think Eric Garcia is a good player. I think Torres is a good player. And I think Laporte has been a good player for quite some time. Not working yet as a combination. And I wonder whether, if Spain had lost today, I think Luis Enrique goes home to the Sergio Ramos conversation, because you can criticize, you can justify the decision to leave him home on the basis that he's not Spain's future, clearly, because of his age. He is moving to the twilight part of his career. But if you concede too many goals like that and you go out as a result of them, then you are going to have that conversation, because he's a veteran. He knows how to win things because he's done a lot of winning of things. Yeah. So work in progress. And I think that will probably be their undoing at this tournament at some point.
Well, I mean, they're going to go on to play Switzerland. You feel like after watching Switzerland today,
feast.
That's what I mean, though. Like, I feel like now we've seen what Switzerland can really do.
Yeah, sure.
There are opportunities. I mean, like that. I feel like there's been a couple of instances now where it's felt a little bit like games are foregone conclusions because of the sort of strength imbalances ahead of them.
Hey.
Today's game, Switzerland-France, obviously being the main example of that. You wouldn't put it past Switzerland now to trouble that Spanish back line, would you?
No, not at all. And the Xhaka absence,
if they get the ball.
If they get the ball, I think Mbolo can hurt them. I think if they produce the same quality of crossing as Croatia did, then I think clearly Seferovic can hurt them.
Yeah.
And Switzerland are really growing on me, because we're used to Switzerland being quite dour and quite turgid and just very blocky.
There's more balance to them this year, isn't there?
Definitely.
I guess that would be my main worry about that game going forwards, is that I think we were having this conversation earlier, JJ, that France aren't a team that require the ball all the time. They're not really, a straightforward possession-based team. Spain, you were saying earlier, in some, perhaps one way of looking at it is to make up for what might be considered defensive weaknesses or unusual dynamics at the moment. One of the things they do to avoid conceding goals is just to not give the ball away ever. And I would worry that without enough chances or enough of the ball, Switzerland might struggle. Yeah,
that's exactly it. And it's like their form of defending is by keeping the ball. I mean, it doesn't maybe make a lot of sense, but if you don't give the ball away, they don't have a chance to score against you. And Spain have faced 24 shots, including blocks on goal, which is the second fewest of any team in the tournament so far. The best record just now is Germany. You've only played 3 games. So they don't give away many shots. Yeah. And I was going through corners for a thing we're going to be releasing about corners soon. I think there was... I might be wrong again, but I think there was maybe only one corner that I can remember watching them having to defend against. They just don't give the ball away. It's changed today because they had a few against them. But yeah, that's how you defend. It's rather than sitting behind the ball and trying to block space and then hit teams in transition and deny teams the opportunity to shoot by being deep. They just push them high and keep them up. And it might seem like higher risk and it means more energy, but the other team's you could argue that if you push high up, then there's so much space between your backline and the goalie that's your safety net. Yeah. Because you've got to be fast to get behind it. I mean, like we're talking about chemistry. I mean, Laporte's brand new to that squad, and Garcia's quite new to professional football, really. He's not played an awful lot. So when Pau Torres comes on and makes that amazing free kick assist for...
what a ball.
Torres. Oh, my God, yeah. Love that.
Well, back to today, I mean, central to that possession effort is, of course, Andres Iniesta. Tell me about his performance today.
The new Iniesta?
Yeah, the new Iniesta.
Yeah, Pedri is one of these players that I think one of the most important things in any footballer is
To be Iniesta.
yeah. I was going to say something really stupid, but I think decision making is one of the most important things. Like Lionel Messi is the best player in the world because every decision he makes is the right one, and you'll see certain players always make the right decision. Pedri always seems to do that. Maybe you think his back pass the goalkeeper should have been wide of the goal. I think you're.
Did they give him the goal though? Because I swear when I watched the replay that it touched Simon's foot.
It was going straight in.
It was going straight in. I think they corrected that in the end, and it's gone down as a Pedri own goal.
So just to help me understand, because the ball was already going towards the goal, even though the goalkeeper touched it, and he's on the same team as the player who kicked it, it's still not his own goal.
It's Pedri's own goal,
It doesn't make any sense.
But it's the same the other way around. So if you had a centre forward taking a shot which went in via a strong hand from the goalkeeper, that's not an own goal.
Yeah, but that's because the opposition team.
I understand, but it's kind of consistent between the two. I completely
It's
get
very
what you're
harsh
saying.
on Pedri.
Yeah.
It's also definitely his own goal. I mean, I think you are taught not to pass back between the width of the posts in the eventuality that happens.
But when you're at an international tournament and you play for Spain, you think, if I pass this relatively tame ball back...
I mean, he put a bit of
Snip?
snap on it.
Bit of snip snap?
Yeah. I mean, it was like, it's kind of ball I would easily miscontrol as an idiot. But like this professional goalkeeper, you think would be able to.
Yeah.
And then you've got a good stat about the goalie.
Yeah, so apparently, according to Guillaume Balaguer, he made 9 mistakes in La Liga, which led to goals, which is the highest in the division, which is interesting because he's viewed as... I think the sort of the take on him from Spain seems to be that definitely the goalkeeper of the future, maybe a little bit early for the promotion, and no one really saw the sort of the calamitous loss of form in David De Gea coming, and he's kind of been thrust into a position where either he has to start or Roberto Sanchez, the Brighton goalkeeper, would have to start, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know that he's even got... I don't think he's got a competitive cap for Spain, so that would be asking an awful lot of an untried goalkeeper. But it's... I don't know. Like, weren't you impressed? I mean, if you try and put yourself in the position of Simon, that happens. How do you rebalance? Because that's not a mistake. That's a catastrophe. That's the whole world is laughing at me and I'm just standing here by myself.
And also,
alone.
you're a goalie, not often involved in play, to be like
you have a lot of
time.
time to be thinking about that and what should I have been doing.
Because he made some good saves afterwards, didn't he?
Well, he made some good saves. What was interesting is the saves are kind of they're reflex saves, so they're not taxing his decision making. I think what impressed me was he kept wanting the ball back to him at his feet. And there was a moment right at the beginning of the second half where someone smashed a back pass straight at him, controlled it really well, played a ball out to.
You'd think twice about doing that, wouldn't you? After what happened,
but I think it takes courage to do that, like because you wouldn't want the ball. I wouldn't. I just every time I got it, I would just be banging it 90 yards up the field.
Sure.
Just get away from me. I don't want anything to do with football anymore. But he was really impressive mentally. That has got to be really tough. So well done him.
Okay. Did you want to say anything more about Pedri?
I just love him. I
That's
think the decisions he makes, the vision he's got to see the passes, his technique seems to be basically perfect. So everything he does is exactly where he wants it to go. Like we talked about, maybe like Phil Foden, like a video game player. You just know everything's going to be perfect. But yeah,
and he's such a young fella.
He's come from nowhere as well. So obviously, like he's not a La Masia graduate. He was signed from Las Palmas, he played in the Segunda division and jumped up. I'd never heard of him until he was wearing a Barcelona shirt, which is really unusual because if you think about the normal passage of Barcelona players when they're coming through the club, you think, right, well, they get talked about in a kind of a Xavi Simons kind of way for a long time.
Yeah.
But he's just jumped up from the second division, come to one of the biggest clubs in the world, and all of a sudden it's not unfair. I mean, I know we're joking. It's not unfair to tag him with that Iniesta brush because some of his passing is eerily similar. There's one in the first half that JJ and I were watching where he just cut the defensive line perfectly. Lovely soft touch. Nobody saw it coming. It wasn't a no-look pass, but it might as well have been. There was so much disguise on it. And I forget who had the opportunity as a result, but it's just beautiful football. And he's 18 with a single season of top-flight football as experience. That's ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Alvaro Morata scored a goal.
Sure did. Take that, people that were sending him death threats.
Yeah, seriously.
That's just messed up. Totally messed up. Like, what are you doing? Like, abusing a player like that? Why are you sort of targeting his, not you. I'm not saying that you, Joe Devine, were doing that, but
I think it was to his family.
To his family, it's just ridiculous the way that. I mean, I sound old saying this, but how football is now, but it's just nonsense.
Yeah. The internet's quite scary, but I think football.
Also, like,
is,
if that's happening, if that's happening to your family, and you're stuck at an international tournament with your teammates, and you're presumably in some kind of COVID situation, you can't go and console whichever family member has suffered this, and it's got to be incredibly upsetting.
I'm pretty sure as well. Like I read this about it on the BBC, and one of the things that Morata said was that like it wasn't just on the internet. Like people were shouting at his family in the street.
That was outrageous.
Like not even just online, you know. Not that just online is fine.
But no, I think face to face is worse. I mean, it's more menacing, and I don't know the first thing about Alvaro Morata's family, but it's just horrible.
Also read the Benitez thing today as well.
Yeah, it was this.
Speaking of people who don't know when to stop.
Yeah, writing sort of "We know where you live" on a big bedsheet and hanging outside. I mean, they said they knew where he lived, but they didn't hang out outside his house. That's quite weird. I know it's not a funny situation, but it's just it's kind of like it captures the nastiness and the idiocy perfectly, doesn't it? It's just
all
horrible.
wrapped into one.
Yeah.
Anyway, he did score a goal today.
Yeah, he did, and a really, really good one, and just as well that he did because he missed a he sort of got caught in two minds with a chance in the first half where cross came over to the back post and he was there, and I don't know whether he was trying to head it back across the goal, but it was a golden opportunity. Should have scored, headed it back and kind of missed it, which was kind of strange. But the goal that he took was absolutely brilliant. It's really nice technique, touch, and some of his touches in open play. I think what gets lost when we sort of reduce Morata to whether he takes chances or not is he's got brilliant technique when he's pulling the ball out of the sky or he's touching off to a teammate. I think it's very easy to say that these things don't matter because the centre forward needs to score goals. I understand, but you can still appreciate just the craft in his game and the ability that he has. And I thought he wasn't excellent, but he scored a very, very important goal and he played pretty well. And yeah, good for him.
Do you think we'll look back on him like we look back on Emil Heskey? You know, a player at the time where sometimes it's in the middle of the game, it's harder to see what they offer because they're not scoring goals as a striker. But then retrospectively, you piece it all together and see what they do for the team.
I don't know. I think something else is going on with Heskey. Like I think if we look back at that and the way he was treated, I don't think many people can be proud of that. I think he was treated really badly.
I mean, specifically from a footballing perspective, though.
Yeah,
like,
I know
just because his goal scoring record wasn't brilliant, but it wasn't always easy to notice what he was doing to aid his goal scoring partners.
I suppose a little bit different for him because Heskey never existed in the spotlight. He was never England's great hope, was he? He was not in the situation where Morata finds himself now, which is it's almost as if the hopes of his nation in this tournament are on his shoulders because Luis Enrique seemingly isn't going to start Gerard Moreno as a 9, so it's Morata or bust. And Heskey was never in that situation. He played with Michael Owen. He became sort of, I suppose, in the attacking sense, he was Michael Owen's water carrier to a lot of people. I think it was a lot more than that. I think Emil Heskey had some really good games for England.
5-1.
Yeah, well taken goal, but Heskey, I think I'm...
Are you laughing at me saying 5-1? Yeah. Listen, we haven't got time to talk about England, Germany, and I was really hoping we would, but we've run too long. So all I'll say on it is 5-1. Anyway, let's do points are bad now, because today they are so bad.
They are really
one
bad.
of the worst days of all time for points.
Points are bad.
Points are very, very bad. As about 100 people pointed out to me directly on Twitter, I chose a terrible day to predict 1-0 for both games and to stop making large, grand, sweeping predictions of 3-3s. I told you there's a 3-3 in a tournament somewhere, didn't I? I told you that about a week ago. A tournament always has a 3-3. And today was our 3-3, Seb.
I don't think that's quite the prediction you think it is.
I said a tournament. No, actually, excuse me. Two things. One, it is a great prediction because Alex Stewart sent us a tweet that said that in the Euros there has only ever been one game in the knockout stages where there were 3 goals scored from both teams, and that was in 1960. Point number 2. Because I said a tournament always has a 3-3, that's the stupid bit, because very clearly that is not true. I think it's instinct. It's instinct that allows me to come up with such great calls, which is why yesterday I predicted 1-0 for both games. And that leaves me last, tremendously far behind you now, Seb, with 111 points. Seb, you're on 98. So you haven't quite broken your century yet.
Okay.
But, you're getting there.
Where's JJ?
JJ's still in second place. The gap has widened again to 7 points. So, there's something to play for. Alex, of course, we mocked him mercilessly yesterday because he kept choosing safe 2-1s so that he can't lose the game.
He was very Alex Stewart with his
He was very Alex Stewart about it.
Goals are rubbish.
Also pretending he doesn't care about the game. He cares.
Heart jumping inside, he's all happy and proud. Yeah.
If you could see underneath that coarse skin, you'd know. He cares deeply.
A dark, brooding expression of his.
But unfortunately, our merciless mocking worked for him today because it made him choose bigger scores. And of course, that's exactly what happened. So there's a 7-point gap between you and Alex now, JJ. Alex leading the way still on 87. JJ just lagging behind there on 94. So Seb, you've still got a chance to finish second here.
Sure do.
Yeah.
Sure do.
I think mine's gone now.
To finish second or just to...
Finish at any position other than last is probably now gone. But alas, we shall predict for tomorrow anyway. And England-Germany, 5-1.
Yes.
5-1.
Penalties. And extra time.
No. Just 5-1. I will not sully my 5-1 prediction with penalties and extra time. I don't need extra predictions
just clarify
there.
that's England 5.
Oh, of course. Come on. Okay. How dare you even ask me that question? Okay. And for me also, Sweden-Ukraine, don't really care, but it is... it's 4-0 Sweden. Okay? Now, JJ, I'll come to you. All-important game first, of course, Sweden-Ukraine. What do you think?
2-1 to Sweden.
2-1 to Sweden. Okay, Seb, what do you think about Sweden?
I think 0-0. Sweden win on penalties.
Okay.
Oh, wait, do we know what Alex has picked? Actually, because I need to beat Alex.
We don't know his picks yet. And what's going to happen is he's going to listen to your picks. And then he's going to choose things based on what you've said so that you can't catch up with him. Because that's Alex Stewart. It's why we love him and it's why we really hate him. Are you sure you want to go with that, Seb? Because remember now, you don't have to predict a draw to also predict extra time.
I understand.
Did you say penalties as well?
Yes.
So you think it'll go to penalties?
I do.
Why don't you predict one team to win? Because that would be better.
No.
You're spreading here.
No.
You're committing.
I've got conviction.
Okay, fine. JJ, England, Germany, please.
England 0. Germany 0. Germany win on penalties.
Okay. Again, are you sure you want to predict the score draw as well as penalties?
Yeah. Germany are going to win in penalties against England.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Well, there we go. Seb?
3-1 Germany.
Like a dagger in my heart.
I feel like there are mind games and I'm picking my scores sort of have to annoy you, have to beat Alex. I want to win.
I think
reason 4 seems to be because you think that's what's going to happen.
JJ,
I don't know.
Let me give you this, JJ. There's a nice piece of advice for points are bad, okay? 5-1, crazy score. 0-0, crazy score. Because how often is it 0-0? Not that often, right? Even just 1-1 is better than 0-0 because if it's 0-0, then you only add 2 points. If it's 2-1, you're adding 3 all of a sudden with your 0-0. Not a sensible selection.
Yeah.
I'll give you the option to change it if you want.
Penalties, Germany, 0-0.
Okay, wow. 2 people here predicting Germany are going to win.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see if we can get any sort of sense from the chat of if anybody thinks England have a chance.
I think England have a chance. I just think Germany will win. I think
because Germany have 3 more chances than England.
Yeah, I think there's something in the English psychology about facing Germany. I think that's what will decide the game.
It's also quite nice, like genuinely. It's quite funny to say that you want England to lose, whatever.
14-3 says.
Living in England as not an England supporter, it's quite nice when like the pubs are filled and everyone's really excited for it. It's quite a nice atmosphere, but there's always a bit. In fact, no, I'm not going to continue with that because we're live on here.
You can't win if you finish that sentence.
I'm not going to finish it.
Just tap out.
I am all for England winning. Genuinely, my family is all English. I'm from Scotland. So.
I like this one. Ash says England 3-1, Foden score and assist. Yes, please. Okay, listen. We'll be back tomorrow to discuss this. This was a long old show, wasn't it? But what a big day of football it was. And thanks to everybody for joining us today. We certainly had fun.
Sure did. Loads of fun today.
The other thing I was saying to Craig on the way downstairs earlier, that on the one hand, it's lovely when days like this happen. And on the other hand, it's kind of sad because you know that this was the best one. That's it now. Like, the tournament will be fun after this. But there won't be a day that was better than this day, right?
I think they're all going to be better. I'm optimistic for the future, hopeful.
I mean,
0-0, Germany, England. Yeah, great. Thanks. Okay, well, JJ Bull, the Bullet, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Seb Seferovic, thank you very much also.
Thank you, Joe Devine.
Thanks to the chat for joining us today. We'll be back tomorrow to cover all the games as discussed. And, of course, as usual, thank you to our crack production team of Don and Craig. And there's Craig's thumb there. Lovely thumb. It's a lovely thumb. Au revoir. Bienvenue. And goodbye.